For centuries, Native American tribes have shared stories of skinwalkers, Bigfoot, and other mysterious creatures with explorers and settlers who come to the New World. These legends, dating back hundreds of years, continue to captivate people today. Witness sightings and encounters with seemingly extraordinary and unbelievable creatures have kept these tales alive. Before we get started, I do want to mention that if you have a creepy story, maybe with an encounter with monsters, Bigfoot, skinwalkers, or any kind of cryptid, I would love to hear them. And you can email me your story. My email is in the description box below. I'm really excited for today's episode. Let me bring in my co-host, Jimmy Church of Fade to Black Radio. Jimmy, happy Thursday, as it is every Thursday. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing, you know what, really good. Really good.
It's just been one of those days.
I hear
Yeah. And you're the bright spot. You're the bright spot for everybody.
Is it the yellow shirt? Is that what it is?
You're the bright spot. Looks good on you. Looks good on you. You're the bright spot for everybody, Christina. So this is going to be a great show. The variety of what we're going to talk about today is really, really cool too as well. I've got a shadow. Is it? Oh, now it's gone. Okay, now the shadow is gone. So I need this like right here. Is that good? Is that good? Okay. Yeah. All right. We'll run with this. Yeah. What? How we have been flipping back and forth. And now suddenly this week it's monsters. What's going on in Gomez's world? Right? What's going on? You okay? Have you been seeing things?
Well, with the Skinwalker show on its latest season, The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, it really got me thinking, which, by the way, you and I will be doing a season review. You knew that, right?
I know now. We've done it for what, 2 years now? 2 years?
Something along those lines.
Yeah. It's a couple of years. And what season is up now?
Cinco.
Is it really? Season 5?
I know. Wow. It's insane. Your Spanish was good, Jimmy. That was impressive.
Yeah, and the that's as far as I can go, by the way. So don't get me to 6. Later on this year, we haven't made the announcement yet, but so I have to hold off on that, but it's been finalized. Are you ready? I'm going to be hosting somewhere a Skinwalker cast roundtable live in person. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, let's go. So, Skinwalker Ranch. Okay. All right. That fair enough. And that may be actually a pretty good place to start. We've got some really cool things to talk about. But let me throw this first question at you, Christina. The history, and that's what this show is about, right? The mystery of the history of monsters. It goes back thousands and thousands of years. What do you think ultimately is going on? Is it just a phenomena that we haven't figured out yet, and it relates to UFOs and ET and interdimensional beings and life after death and ghosts and spirits and monsters and leprechauns and fairies and is it all just one thing that we just haven't figured out yet? What do you think is going on? People are seeing things. I've seen things, right? What do you think's going on?
I think there's a world around us that we can barely perceive, but, sometimes it peeps through. And with every myth, every legend, there's a nugget of truth there. But of course, we have to put in the mundane explanations of pareidolia and misidentification. And I want to just provide one example, actually, very quickly, is the platypus. All right. A wacky animal. And up until the 1700s, it was a mythical creature. It was a cryptid. People were like, there is no way a mammal that lays eggs and that is poisonous and that has a duck beak and like a beaver tail exists. It's impossible until they found one. And then it was an absolute game changer. But what we're looking at today, the cryptids that we'll be mentioning, some of them, I will not lie to you, I was not familiar with, and a few others are going to be more popular cryptids, but we'll be discussing different aspects to it, different characteristics that maybe some people haven't considered significantly. And I think because we mentioned Skinwalker Ranch, that's a good place to start talking about the Skinwalker for those that are not familiar with it. And I have some images here to go ahead and pull up. But Jimmy, can you give us a brief summary on what the Skinwalker is?
Well, okay, so check this out. If we go with the Navajo, now outside of the Navajo culture, Skinwalker and what its actual meaning and the lore behind it is, it's not out there. And it's not part of other cultures around the world. And I find that very, very interesting. But if we go with the direct translation of Skinwalker in Navajo, it means by means of it, it goes on all fours. Right? Okay, so you can just stop right there and go, that's pretty crazy. And now in the traditions, animals, a lot of coyote, right? A lot of wolf, have been associated with witchcraft inside of the Navajo culture. And it includes tricksters. And I've just mentioned the coyote, but it's also associated with death or bad omens, the Skinwalker, and that they may also possess living animals. They may also possess people and walk around in their bodies, hence Skinwalkers. And that right there. Now, so what do you do with that? Well, there are some that say that's how you teach children. Right. You scare the crap out of them and they behave. And there's that part of it. And the other part with it is that they are not male or female. They can be both. Right. So Skinwalkers are not predominantly female or they're not predominantly male. They can be either. And that aspect of it and the fear aspect, it's very scary how it's presented. But then you've got the other side where the phenomena seems to be present and accounted for. So Skinwalkers are absolutely amazing. And then, of course, when we talk about cryptids, then we have Skinwalker Ranch and what has been going on in and around Skinwalker Ranch and Utah and that area in general.
I know a lot of people are very familiar with Skinwalkers, mainly because of the TV show, but there are just a few things that I would like to mention. First of all, when it comes to several tribes, especially around the four corners of the United States, they at all costs attempt to avoid even mentioning the word Skinwalker because it is believed that if you say it, you can attract these entities, these people, these medicine men. Depending on the tribe, there's different ways on how to become a Skinwalker. But for the majority of these tribes, what they mention is that you have to do a terrible crime, maybe kill a family member or something even worse, in order to possess the powers in order to shapeshift. So they will take on animal skins and then turn into a coyote, a fox, so on and so forth. There is one person that has done significant research in when it comes to skinwalkers, and that is retired Navajo Ranger John Dover. He is one of the very few people that has looked into this with his background. And there are some really extreme stories when it comes to skinwalkers. He's actually mentioned one to me when I did an interview with him. And he said that this one time, I think it was either him or someone that he knew was driving a car at about 70 or 80 miles per hour. And the skinwalker was keeping up with this vehicle going at that speed for an extended period of time. Now, when it comes to cheetahs, for instance, they can only run at a significant speed for a very short time frame. But when we're looking at these entities, at least according to John Dover's story, it's pretty extreme. There's also seems to be tribes amongst themselves with these skinwalkers, according to his research, that they mingle amongst themselves. But the thing is, and the question might be, why would you want to turn into one of these entities? Is it by choice, or is it something to do maybe something very similar to like vampires, where you don't get that option? Instead, you might be chosen. Skinwalkers are a very eerie topic, especially because it is still very alive today in the legends and myths. And when it comes to the Navajo attempting to avoid this conversation at all costs, it's one of those things that does add this layer of interest for a lot of people when covering cryptids. Jimmy, for yourself, when you look at this with skinwalkers in particular, maybe even the Wendigo or Windigo, what goes through your mind? Do you think it's possible for a person to possess occult powers and then able to shapeshift, or do you think it's kind of crazy?
No, I don't. I don't think it's crazy at all. I interviewed somebody that lived, this is on the air, lived next to Skinwalker Ranch. And this is what he told me. He said their house, the family house, which is one of the closest homes before you get to Skinwalker Ranch, right? It's like right next to it. Well, it's that Skinwalker Ranch is further up the road, but they are the closest house to Skinwalker Ranch. And this is what he said. He said they had a skinwalker that lived behind their house, in and around their barn. And that when they would pull up, and especially at night, when they will pull up in the car, they would see it. They would see it near the front porch. They would see it then take off, run back from the house back to the barn area. But this is how he described it. He said it looked like a large black dog with glowing red eyes. And sometimes it walked like it was on all fours, but you couldn't see its legs. Right? And I said, so what do you guys do? We can't do anything. We don't talk about it. We don't. You can't invite it in. We just know it's there and we just deal with it. Now, clearly the family is seeing something. And the legend behind a skinwalker, which is, don't talk about it. What do you, right? Do not invite it in. And this family has been dealing with it. And he said when they pull up in the car and they're looking at it, nobody says anything. Nobody can talk about it. They just let it go on about its business and they just live with it. Now, the family is seeing something. So what is it with the phenomenon? I don't know. Clearly, there's something going on, and the indigenous tribes that I've been talking about this for a very, very, very long time, know how to deal with it, and we need to listen to them. They have the experience, and I just find it completely compelling. There is something to the phenomenon.
It's a really mysterious thing. And I'm reading here by Peace. It says, are there any ways to protect ourselves besides not talking about the skinwalkers? So as the legends go, when it comes to Navajo practice in particular, it's saging yourself. So when I was speaking to John Dover, he had mentioned after every time he spoke about it or doing research, he would sage himself right after in a way to protect himself. So that is also something that maybe you could do, especially if you're visiting the Four Corners and want to attempt and hunt for the Skinwalker, investigate it. Yeah, bring some sage with you. But Jimmy, I picked the first cryptid. I want to give the next one over to you because we just have such a limited amount of time and so much to cover. Where do you want to take us next?
You want to go modern? You want to go, well, we can go modern. Okay. How about, let's talk about something that I sort of heard about. Okay. Sort of. I've heard of it, didn't do a lot of research in it, but that is bat squatch.
Oh.
Bat squatch. And the reason why that, okay, now everybody's just like it sounds, right? Let's just go with that. Bat squatch. And it's the bat squatch of Mount St. Helens. Now, Mount St. Helens erupted, as we all know, in 1980, 81, right in there. And so it was in April of 1994 when a witness, his name was Brian Canfield, he was driving home and through the backwoods of Pierce County, Washington. And he described the creature as standing 9 feet tall with a bat's face and wings attached to a blue furred humanoid body. He said it had large fangs and glowing red eyes. Now, here is what this, I checked this out. I have this here. This is what Canfield reported in an interview with the News Tribune in Tacoma, Washington in 1994. So, quote, it was standing there staring at me. It was like resting, like it didn't know what to think. I was scared. It raised the hair on my arms. I didn't feel threatened. I just felt out of place. It's looking right at me, like in a deep stare, like right through me. It's standing perfectly still. It stood for how long? And that was a question thrown at him. And he said a few minutes, several minutes. Then its fingers twitched and its wings began to unfold. Those wings were as wide as the road. It turned its head and looked back at me and started flapping its wings. A few minutes later, the truck just started and I took off as fast as I could. Oh, so that was the other part to the story. He's driving on the backwoods. The creature is in front of him. His truck died. So he was stuck with this confrontation that he could do nothing about. So that's Bat Squatch of Mount St. Helens. And that sighting was in 1994. What is that? We're in 2024. Is that 30 years ago? It is. Yeah, it seems modern, 1994, but it's 30. That sighting is 30 years ago.
Well, there was actually a sighting back in 2011, also for the Daily Chronicle, and it stated that these people were hiking in the Mount Helens area, and the hikers claimed that they saw a large bat-like creature flying above them, matching the descriptions of the previous bat squatch sightings in the 80s and 90s. Now, the one in 1994 is the most famous one. It's the one that kind of gives the public some of the most details when it comes to bat squatch. But this is where my mind was going when I came across this, because I had never heard of this cryptid. And I was thinking of it exactly like how this image shows. A ginormous Bigfoot, 7-8 feet tall, burly, hairy, heavy as hell, with ginormous wings flying around everywhere. And I'm thinking, how do those wings even carry that? Then you might say, well, airplanes, come on, helicopters, valid. But this is something that I thought, how come I have never heard of this before, and I have a lot of questions when it comes to this cryptid. This is
Stop right there. Pump the brakes. Pump the brakes. Isn't this Mothman? Isn't this the West Coast Mothman? Are we talking about the same species? That's the part that I was always intrigued with when it came to Bat Squatch. It sounds like we are talking about the same phenomena on two different coasts. That's where I'm going with this.
That is interesting. So then the question would be after that, was it created here on Earth? Is it maybe extraterrestrial and it just came here? Is it some kind of experiment? Is it natural? I mean, the questions here are endless because with Mothman, there are several theories when it comes to it. Then you're dealing with Bat Squatch. I don't think I'm saying it right. Bat Squatch. And could it just be a hybrid of Bigfoot? And they got wings.
So could Mothman, right? We're just inventing names here, right? So Mothman's got hit, and Bat Squatch, and same creature. We're just searching for ways to describe them. Now, he said nothing went down, right? They looked at each other, but he didn't feel threatened. He was scared, and he should have been scared, right? I get that, but nothing happened, right? Nobody was attacked, and there you go. So, yeah. It seems like we're talking about Mothman here, just on different sides of the country, which again, does one support the other? And was Mothman kind of, now this is a strange comparison, but if you think about it, Mothman was like a premonition to the bridge disaster. Okay. All right. And it's a whole long story, and John Keel and the Mothman prophecies and all of that. But could Bat Squatch have saved his life? Right? Was it some type of he stopped his truck? Now I'm talking about, Brian saying that when his truck died, was there something that was about to happen and Bat Squatch intervened by showing up on the road and stopping his truck and then leaving and allowing Brian to then drive away safely? Now, is that there's some similarities here? I'm just putting it out there. Just putting it out there.
Some characteristics when talking about Bat Squatch include having purple skin, sharp claws, a bat-like face, large red eyes, and wings. This sounds like something out of H.P. Lovecraft. I mean, it really has all of the factors here. And it's so let me back up. For those that have seen Bat Squatch and that live to tell the tale, there are some explanations on what it might be, including misidentifying a super large bird like a horned owl or possibly a new species of large bat or flying primate. Could you imagine? Let's say this is 7-8 feet tall. You can't confuse it for some kind of owl.
You can't.
Even though an owl's wingspan can go about like 6 to 7 feet long, some of the longer wingspans. How are you going to explain the fingers and the hands and like feet?
Now he says 9 feet tall.
That's insane.
Yeah, not 6 feet, which is big, right? When you're talking about 9 feet, this is a big creature. Then he said when it spread its wings, the wings were as wide as the road. Now, if you picture 9 foot tall and wings that wide, the proportions kind of fit. I'm okay with that. I'll tell you where, just like what you just said, a large owl, right? An eagle, a raven. I've got ravens around my house, and the wingspan on those when they get going, it's pretty big. It's not like that. So the proportions fit. 9 foot tall, wingspan spanning the road, which is 20 feet. Right, you have 10 foot per lane. That's a pretty bizarre situation. He saw something, and he very accurately described it. He's not the only witness, by the way. But I like the fact that he said he didn't feel threatened. He was scared, but they just looked at each other and away it flew. And it seems legit.
All we can take is the witness testimony. That's all we can do. And I did show the newspaper clipping for it. Here is one of them, and there's actually a few cryptids that we'll be mentioning that have been written about in the newspaper. But this next one we're going to get into, I actually laughed by the name mainly because I misread it. And let me just... So the next cryptid we're going to be mentioning, and actually, hold on. Before I do that, Satyam, thank you so much for that. And I will look into it for sure. I really appreciate you supporting the channel. So one cryptid that I came across, and again, that I misread, and I want to tell it to you how I misread it. And I'm sorry, the Pope Liquor Monster. Now, it's actually not pronounced it's actually pronounced the Pope Lick Monster, which has to do with a lake. But I'm sorry. So it's also referred to as the Goat Man. But this one in particular, so takes place in Kentucky. Now, the Goat Man myth and legend take place in a handful of states. These include Maryland, Texas, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Georgia, Louisiana, and Virginia. And a lot of them originated around the same time frame between the 50s and the 70s. However, there are a few states that are outliers coming way beforehand. But this one taking place in Kentucky, known again as the Pope Lick Monster, not the Pope Liquor, because why on earth would you call a monster that? But this one is also referred to as the Goat Man of Pope Lick, the Sheep Man, and the Pope Lick Creature. And this monster kind of gained fame in the mid to late 1900s. So we're looking at like the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. That was kind of the time frame. And it's described as having a body of a goat with the upper torso of a man and a rather grotesque face with wide set eyes, horns, and claw-like hands. With all of these myths that deal with the Goat Man, there are different origin stories. Some of them have to do with the crazy scientist. Some of them have to do with them being some kind of hybrid. And this one in particular, there are actually several theories, but they all originate, or they all kind of nestle in this location in a railway bridge over Pope Lick Creek. And I think when we're dealing with monsters in general, they do like to hide under bridges, near tunnels, right? That is one theme that we see consistently. Jimmy, have you heard of this cryptid before today?
I have, and I've seen a couple of purported pictures and photographs of the bridge outside of Louisville, where he is said to live, seen mainly at night. What I dig about is what I dig about the Pope Lick Monster. You're right about saying that out loud. The Goat Man is the depictions and the descriptions of him are pretty scary. and you can associate those kind of images with other demonic type descriptions from the past. So you have that part of it. But the next part, living under a bridge, living under a railroad trestle, right outside of town in Fisherville, Louisville, Kentucky. That's just scary. That's just scary. And I immediately go to those childhood fairy tales that we heard and those folk tales about the troll under the bridge. But here we have the modern twist of it. And then it's not a little troll, it's a giant half man, half goat, scary demon like creature. Now it's been seen a lot. This isn't, just, hey, you want to hear a scary story? No, this is he's been seen. Now I love it. I love it. Here's the thing. When it comes to all of this, cryptids and that research, you can go and jump into this, and you can go to any state, you can go to any city, you can go to any country, anywhere on Earth, and get reports of this from the locals. This isn't some, a very centralized phenomenon. This has been going on forever. And the idea of cryptids and its research, I find it completely compelling, Christina. I really, really do. The lore of monsters and local monsters, monsters living in lakes and in the woods and in caves and disappearing and reappearing, and interdimensional aspects to this. It's every culture, everywhere in the world.
It is. And you always hear the best stories around a campfire. Now, imagine this just for a moment. You're sitting around, you're roasting some marshmallows, and the storyteller says, "So, are you ready to hear about the Pope liquor?" Dude, I don't know how anyone would keep their liquid in their mouth without spitting it out everywhere and then having the fire just extinguish, because that is crazy. But you mentioned that there were a handful of sightings, and that is correct. So you had some in the 1960s, in 1988, and even in the early 2000s, people have encountered this very strange looking creature in that area of Louisville, Kentucky, near that train track. And okay. Let's talk about this just for a moment. The whole show today is about cryptids, monsters. If you were to casually encounter something that you did not know and it did not register in your brain on a regular day you were hiking, and I'm not saying like you were out looking for a cryptid, but you were just minding your own business and you came across one, maybe for instance, the Pope-like monster or Bat Squatch, what would you do? And let's say you had no weapon on you, you were not prepared for this sighting. What would be the first thing you would do?
Run. Run.
Don't even look back. Just go.
Run. What? I'm not going to save the world. I'm not going to save you, Christina. You're on your own.
Me, right? So
yeah, you're on your own. You're on your own. Yeah, I'll see you at the car. I'll see you at the car. And here in the United States, we have cow tipping, right? Bunch of kids. Okay, let's go out cow. In Rome, they go Pope licking. That's what they do there. They go out and do Pope licking. But yeah, I would run. Am I going to hang out to see? And with Brian Canfield's description of Bat Squatch earlier, and I know I talk about squatching and going out and doing this stuff. Okay, with a group of friends, would I do it alone? No. Would I venture into the woods alone? No. I've seen that movie. It's just simply not going to happen. But if I'm in the moment where something like that happens, Brian, his truck died. So he can't drive away, but he's got his truck there. Does he run? Does he leave his truck? He's got sanctuary there. You can go run into the truck and lock the door, roll up the windows, and hope for the best. You've got that part of it. I can see that. But if I'm in the woods, I'm outside, and something like that happens, you don't. It's not like a bear or a wolf or a coyote, a lion, a mountain lion, where you can kind of like, okay, back up, and do the. That's natural. But when you are seeing something supernatural, paranormal, something like this, a cryptid, no, cut and run, yeah.
And for
Yeah,
those,
I'm not playing around. What, you're gonna hang out and go, hey dude, selfie? No, you're not. No, you're not. That's not. No. There's times to play, right? And there's times to not. And you see a flying saucer in the sky? That's in the sky. Okay? Flying saucer lands, door drops down, and creatures come off. Honestly, at that moment, what do you do? You're not going to stand there. If you can, if you're not frozen in fear, man, get the picture. Get the picture. But no, you're not going to hang out. How do you know? How do you know? So no, I cut and run.
and for those listening or watching, what would you do? Again, you're
See,
unprepared. You don't know what's going on. What would you do? Let me know in the live chat. Let me know in the comments. I definitely want to hear what you have to say. And W. Decker, thank you so much. It says the goat man will forever be ingrained in my mind as the Pope licker now. Hey, buddy, me too. The only monster that I will run from while laughing hysterically. You're going to be out of breath a lot faster if you do the two simultaneously. So good luck there if you do end up encountering one. I picked this one. Jimmy, you picked the next cryptid.
Let's go. Well, you know what? I love this. So let's go with the Honey Island swamp monster.
All right.
Okay. I know you thought I was going to go Snallygaster.
I didn't know where you were going. I ain't no mind reader.
I'm gonna leave the Snallygaster for you, just because I want to hear you say it. So, but the Honey Island swamp monster. It was many years ago, and I had a guest on. We were going to do cryptids, and we we're going to do this, and I remember going through the list of monsters by state. Okay? All right? And I had no idea. You can go. There is a local monster festival for just about every town in the United States. There is. If you just pick Happy Town, USA. Go to Happy Town. What did they do in the summer? Happy Town Swamp Monster Festival, right? and I could not believe it, Christina. The local legends, and every town has got it's crazy, and that applies to the Honey Island Swamp Monster. The Honey Island Swamp Monster, also known as, are you ready? The Cajun Sasquatch, and in Cajun French, La Bête Noire.
Like that? That was good.
You like that? Formula One race car driver and tanning enthusiast Jimmy Church is also a fan of La Bête Noire. Yeah. Anyway, it's an ape-like humanoid. Oh man, this show just
What
lost
do I do
control of
with you,
itself.
Jimmy? What do I do when I
Yeah,
do
it just lost control. Similar to because ape-like, right? It's been described as that. Similar to Bigfoot, and is said to live in the Honey Island Swamp, which is in St. Tammany Parish, Louisiana. And again, like I said, you can go to any town in the United States and they will have their local monster festival every year. It's all over the place. I did a bunch of research and I remember specifically, and the fans of Fade to Black will probably go back and remember this. I did a whole like hour going through the different monster festivals across the United States. I was shocked. I was shocked. And I was looking, I had pictures and I had video, and it's crazy. The local promotion and the effort that goes into this, it's pretty amazing. Well, that's what they do here. And the creature is commonly described by witnesses as large, bipedal, humanoid, 7 to 8 feet tall, gray hair, having yellow or red eyes, and really stinks.
Kind of like the skunk ape, but these apparently are two separate creatures. Got the skunk ape, and then you have the Honey Island Swamp Monster. Now, according to legend, this creature was a human-like beast that was raised by alligators. Now, the more modern legend, however, began in the early 1960s, and it seems like when it comes to the United States, you have a few legends that were passed down hundreds of years ago, and then you have a good chunk of legends that took place between the 50s and 70s. This one is one of those when it comes to the more modern legends of this. And this creature is located near Pearl River. It's vast and it's a very remote area, which has a bunch of like dense vegetation, waterways, and obviously a rich diversity of wildlife, making it an ideal place for such a creature to hide. The same thing with Bigfoot in almost any part, maybe minus the Himalayas, right? They're usually in very dense locations where they can receive and get a lot of food. So there are a few sightings that have taken place. One in 1963, another one in 1974, and then also local residents in the area have been seeing this creature since the 1980s onward. Jimmy, do you have any specific cases that you want to cover with this one?
Well, it's in a broad sense, how many shows and cases have we done over the years, Christina, where we jump back 100 years, 150 years, where there's a report in the local paper and with witnesses of a horse and buggy or that has been shredded or tipped over by the hairy creature that came out of the woods. How many of those have we've done dozens of those, right? This isn't anything new. These reports now, right now we're talking about Louisiana. We've got Bigfoot all over California and Oregon and Washington. You just mentioned the Himalayas. You can go to, where there is a ton of Bigfoot sightings? Ohio, tranquil Ohio. You've got the Jersey Devil. You've got things going on in New Jersey. You've got things all over Florida. You've got Bigfoot sightings all over Texas, right? This isn't anything new, right? So when we look at this, we just talked about Bat Squatch, right? and when we've got something like the Honey Island Swamp Monster, it's called the Honey Island Swamp Monster because it lives in the Honey Island Swamp. I could be the Palmdale radio guy. I'm a radio guy that lives in Palmdale, right? These monsters, these Sasquatch type bipedal monsters are named locally and geographically, but they are probably the descendants of the same species, right? And that's what I have to add to that. I think that everybody has got their own version of this living to them locally, and they give it a local name, and it's across the United States, but it's all around Europe. It's all over Africa and India and the Alps and the Himalayas. And you know what though? You know, I've just answered my own point. When I was in Peru, right, the Andes Mountains, which is giant, beautiful, amazing, and all of this history and ET and megalithic structures. And I asked the locals, Christina, you guys ever see a Bigfoot? Nope. I go to the next mountain. I go to the next village. You guys ever see Bigfoot? Nope. No Bigfoot here. No Bigfooty here. It was crazy to me that nowhere in Peru and Bolivia, in these very remote villages out in the mountains out there, where no connection to humanity, right? And it's very strange. No Bigfoot. I mean, like, very direct answer. Nope. Crazy, right?
It really is. It really is. That's when you got to find the people that live deep in the forest that don't want to speak to you. They're always the ones that have the craziest stories.
You would think. I thought I was going to be able to come back to, what do we have here? Annie Richards. There I was drinking a nice glass of Pinot Grigio. Then I heard Pope liquor. Now my screen has a few extra pixels. Yeah. Well done.
Thanks, Eddie.
Well done. I thought, and I'm not, I'm not making anything up. I was hoping I was going to come back to the States, come on with you and go, check this out. Got this Bigfoot story from Peru. But no. I was talking to an archaeologist and an anthropologist there in Peru, two professionals that do amazing research that discuss the really fantastic side of these megalithic structures and ET and contact and what could be going on down there. I asked them both. Okay, Bigfoot? Nope. Right? And I was hoping, but yeah, nothing. No footprints, no sightings, no legends, nothing. Yeah. I came back with nothing. But back to the Honey Island swamp monster. I think that we're talking about the same creature. And again, it seems to go south, but kind of stops like in Central America. We've had reports everywhere else. China, right? We've got it. We've got it in Europe. We've got it in the Himalayas. We've got all of that, but not in South America. I don't understand why.
Now that you mentioned it, you're right. I have not come across a story of Bigfoot, of any story of Bigfoot in South America. They have their own set of cryptids and very scary stories, to be honest with you. But yeah, now that
No, doesn't exist. I tried. I've made a lot of friends down there. I did, and I'm going back. But it's just one of those things where I thought of all of ET and this and that, and they're full on. We'll discuss it all day long. There's all of that. They ain't got no Bigfoot.
No, nothing like that.
Absolutely fascinating. Okay, so what are we looking at here?
I guess we have more cryptids to cover, but we only
the
have a few minutes left.
Snallygaster. Let's go.
We're mentioning the Snallygaster, and I have a really fun fact about this one. Okay, so before we even get started, the Snallygaster here is a newspaper clipping of it. There's actually a handful of newspaper clippings that you can find on the Snallygaster Museum website. It's really cool. But here, this particular cryptid originated in the early 1700s because German immigrants brought with them the term Schnellergeist or quick spirit. And I know someone's going to say, Christina, you said that wrong. I probably did. But as Maryland cultures blended, the Schnellergeist became the Snallygaster. And it's believed to be a type of dragon bird kind of entity. And it's said to have one eye, a beak, a dragon like body, and strangely, it has tentacles coming from its mouth. So this really gained traction in the year 1909 after reports of the Snallygaster claimed that it drained a Middletown man of blood and tossed his body off of a cliff. And some even claim that Teddy Roosevelt himself, the 26th president of the United States, had plans to hunt the beast at the end of his term as president back in the very early 1900s. Now, what's also really cool about Roosevelt, here's my fun fact for you. And I have an image, but I don't have time to pull it up because he wrote a book. And I hold on, he wrote several books, but one of them, and I got to find it in my notes to make sure that I say it correctly. He wrote the book called The Wilderness Hunter back in 1893. And in that story, he's talking about, well, how to do exactly that. But he did mention one story about what people are assuming he was referring to Bigfoot. So it seems like Roosevelt had an interest with cryptids, first with his book written in 1893 about Bigfoot, kind of, at least a few pages, and then him allegedly wanting to hunt the Snallygaster. Now, he was a very avid hunter. He traveled the world hunting animals, but I thought this was really interesting to mention for my fun fact when it comes to the topic about Snallygasters. But going back to the topic of this very interesting cryptid, here's an image of what it's supposed to kind of look like.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So it's got octopus tentacles on his. That's not
right.
I
would run from this one. Like,
yeah, that's
no
not
hesitation.
Right. That's not right. That's just wrong. That's just wrong. Yeah. Oh, no. I can't unsee that.
I know. There's no going back from this one.
I can't unsee that.
Creepy stuff. It really, really is. Now, ever since 1909, there haven't been any sightings to my knowledge referring to the Snallygaster. So this was kind of like a hit and run kind of deal. But we have to cover it today because it's a wacky. I mean, look at this image. It's a wacky cryptid.
So do you hang out and take a selfie with that? Or are you outrunning me back to the car?
If I'm wearing the right tennis shoes, man, I can speed through anything.
You probably could. I'm not hanging out. There's no interview going down with the Snallygaster. No, you're going to let that one go. I mean, just right? Suck the blood out of men and threw the body out of the village with that? Yeah, that's messed up. Okay. All right, hold on. We've got time for one more. Let's squeeze it in.
Okay.
The Van Meter visitor.
Gotcha. All right.
You know what's great about this? And I know that the audience is like, hey man, I got some knowledge today writing this stuff down. This is the Van Meter visitor. All right. Strange events occurred in October of 1903. Several respected members. They always did that in these old-timey articles. He was a sober man, right? Very well trusted man. They always, right? So here we go. Several respected members of the community told of a mysterious winged creature that terrorized some of the town's residents during several nights in the course of the week. Descriptions of the beast suggested that it had large bat-like wings, left a terrible stench wherever it went, and even stranger, it fired beams of bright light from its forehead. You gotta love the Van Meter visitor. That's like a Japanese. That's a Japanese movie from 1965.
I'm lost for words for this one because it looks very much like a pterodactyl, but you have this horde and you have this beam of light coming from it. And actually, I'm just gonna leave it like that. I don't really have a lot of commentary on this one. I looked into it. There was that sighting in October of 1903. It was several nights in a row. There were multiple witnesses that encountered this entity, but it was another one and done cryptid. But there, as you saw in the first image, there was a newspaper clipping of it. And here's how we can kind of assume how.
Go back to that news clipping. Go back to that news clipping.
Absolutely.
Does it have a horse in its mouth?
Oops.
It does.
Oh,
got a horse in his mouth.
That just gives you a nice scale of how big this thing might have been.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. Kind of looks like Daffy Duck if you look at the face. Looks like Daffy Duck. That's a big creature. This one and done, right? I like what you they hit and run, the one and done. When I was a kid, and probably there are some out there that will remember this, but when I was a kid in Indianapolis, there was a run that happened in the local newspapers, talked about on the news, of these Thunderbird sightings in and around the state of Indiana. And there were some film. It was before videotape and video cameras. There was some film. There were some pictures that were taken. And it got to be such a big story that my friends and I were going out looking for them. I mean, it was like, it wasn't like a ghost thing. It wasn't like, it wasn't any of that. This was Thunderbird sightings. And bird watchers were going out, and there were rumors about what it could be. An extinct condor that has come back and is now back from there. There were all of these rumors, but the descriptions were 15-foot wingspans, these giant birds, and the film and the pictures that were taken. This was in Indiana. I can't speak for Ohio or Illinois or Michigan or Kentucky or any of the states around Indiana, but this was in Indiana. And then it just went away. Yeah, the story, just like you're saying, it's like a one and done. That one summer when I was a kid, it was a really, really big deal. What were people saying? I don't think, especially back then, hoaxing giant birds, that's a difficult thing to do. Today it's whatever. You can just tell AI to create it and you've got your video. But back then it was a little bit different. And like I said, we were going out looking for it. It was like that kind of thing, but it just went away. It just died.
Well, if we think about this, maybe from a logical standpoint, and some might say this is not logical at all, but whatever, we're going to do it anyway. What if there's a kind of like cryptid police, kind of like the portal police, right? The PP, which is a joke, by the way. Maybe it's real. I don't know. But the thing is that with some of these cryptids that are a one and done, like the one that we just mentioned, the Snallygaster, maybe even the Mothman, because those sightings were very rare in a very pointed time period. what if there are people or some kind of entity that are monitoring the planet and taking off these certain types of creatures that maybe shouldn't be here, maybe that were collected from who knows, maybe another planet, the same way that we have zoos, how humanity has zoos. Maybe extraterrestrials or interdimensionals could do things very similar, and they're
Sure.
hopping planets, getting strange creatures, and maybe some escape. They could be some created in labs, and then the scientists or maybe even the security guards have to hunt them down to not gain too much attention in those areas, right? Or it's just merely someone's eyes are messed up, they weren't wearing their glasses, and that could also be an answer. But these one and done kind of cryptids, that's for me, that's where my mind goes, that there might be some kind of patrolling of these entities to say, you could only be seen once, buddy, and that's enough.
Great show. Christina, thank you so much. Perfect show. Love it. Love it. We should do another one. We should do another one of these. The list of cryptids is long. We could do a part 2 of this. I'll see everybody tonight on Fade to Black. I have Glennis McCants on tonight. We're doing a numerology. So I'll see everybody tonight on the show. Christina, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jimmy. This was a really fun show. We got out of the UFO phenomenon and we talked about cryptids, but hopefully we covered a few that you have never heard of. Probably the Pope Liquor is one of them. And next time you go hang out with your friends, say, hey, did you hear about the Pope Liquor monster? And they'll be like, what are you on? Are you okay? And then you say, just kidding. It's called the Pope Lick monster, but it'll forever be the Pope Liquor in my heart and maybe yours as well. If you enjoyed the show, hit that like button and subscribe, as I do 3 shows right here almost every single week. Tomorrow is going to be strangest news of the week. You don't want to miss it, as it will be live. And I want to say thank you to all of the Super Chat, Super Stickers, YouTube members, and of course, all of my amazing moderators. You know I cannot do this show without you. And if you're watching this on a laptop or on a computer, scan this QR code. It'll take you to all of my social media links. And I do write articles for all of the shows right here. So if you like reading bite-sized pieces of information, you can find it on my website at strangeparadigms.com or on Medium, and you just type in Christina Gomez, and there is no H in Christina. I will see you tomorrow. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies. If you enjoy the strange and the mysterious, UFOs, the paranormal, and cryptids, this channel is for you. So make sure to subscribe, as I do 3 videos right here every single week, and hit that notification bell so you do not miss any of the bonus content I post right here.